My wife filed for divorce and claimed I was broke, presenting fake financial documents to the judge that showed I had negative $84,000 in debt. I sat silently through her entire presentation, then asked for 2 minutes to present my actual portfolio. Within 12 hours, I had shown property deeds, stock certificates, and business ownership files proving I was worth $8.7 million. But before we get to that, do us one quick favor. Subscribe, hit the like button while you're at it, and comment where you're listening from so we can see how far these stories are reaching. My name is Thomas, and I sat through the worst betrayal of my life without saying a word, because I knew something nobody else in that courtroom understood yet. I need to start this story about 4 months before that courtroom moment. That's where the real story begins. That's where I found out who my wife really was, and who my daughter had become. My wife, Catherine, and I had been married for 28 years. I built a construction company from nothing. I started with a single truck and a tool shed in our backyard. Over decades, I bought land. I invested in real estate. I bought into businesses that other people thought were too risky. I never talked about money. I never needed to. I provided for my family. I gave Catherine everything she wanted. I paid for our daughter's wedding. I paid for their house. I paid for their cars. I never asked for anything in return except loyalty and honesty. That was my mistake. Catherine had been acting strange for almost a year before the divorce papers came. She stayed out late. She had secret phone calls. She started going to yoga classes that I later found out were meetings with a divorce attorney. I noticed these things. I said nothing because I loved her. I thought maybe she was just going through something. I thought we could work through it. The day she served me papers, I was finishing a job site inspection. I remember holding those papers in my hand, while standing in the middle of half-built apartments. The foreman asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine. I got in my truck and sat there for 45 minutes, reading the same paragraph over and over. She was claiming I had hidden assets. She was claiming I was hiding money. She was claiming I had debt that I was concealing. The paperwork was filled with lies that sounded almost plausible if you didn't know me. I called my attorney. His name was Robert. He'd handled my business deals for 15 years. When I told him what Catherine was claiming, he laughed. He said it was absurd. He said he'd never seen anyone accuse me of being broke when I'd literally purchased a shopping center the year before. Then Catherine dropped the first bombshell. 3 weeks after the divorce papers, I received a notice that Catherine had filed a motion for emergency financial disclosure. She claimed I was about to hide assets. She claimed I was financially unstable. She wanted the court to freeze our accounts and give her temporary control of everything. I went to Robert's office and sat across from him in his leather chair. He looked at the paperwork with a confused expression. Then his face changed. "Thomas," he said slowly, "where did she get these documents?" I looked at the papers he was holding. They showed bank statements. They showed investment account balances. They showed debts that I had never taken on. The numbers were negative. The debts totaled over $84,000. These documents had my name on them. They had my signature on them. They appeared to come from my bank. "That's not my signature," I said. "I know," Robert replied. "I've seen your signature on dozens of legal documents. This isn't close. These documents are fake." I sat there in his office and felt something cold settle into my chest. My wife had fabricated financial documents. My wife had committed fraud in a court of law. My wife was trying to take everything I had built and pretend. I was the one who was hiding things. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. Robert told me not to worry. He said the truth would come out easily. I nodded and thanked him, but I wasn't worried. I was something else entirely. Those 2 weeks gave me time to think. I didn't confront Catherine. I didn't accuse her of anything. I continued living in our house, sleeping in the guest room, eating breakfast alone in the kitchen while she talked on the phone in the living room. I listened to her voice. I noticed how happy she sounded. I noticed how she never looked at me anymore. I started keeping a notebook. Every day, I wrote down what I observed. I wrote down the phone calls. I wrote down the times she left. I wrote down the names she mentioned. I wrote down everything. My daughter, Jennifer, got involved around that time. Jennifer was my only child. I had been there for every recital, every game, every moment of her life. When she met her husband, Derek, I gave him a job in my company. I helped them buy their first house. I paid for their wedding. I thought I was building something that would last. Derek had different ideas. I first noticed Derek's behavior at a family dinner 3 months before the divorce. He was sitting at the end of the table, looking at his phone most of the night. When I asked him about his work, he gave short answers. When I tried to talk to him about business, he changed the subject. Jennifer didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she didn't care. The week after Catherine served me papers, Jennifer came to my office. She sat across from my desk and looked at me with eyes that didn't feel like my daughter's eyes anymore. "Dad, I think you should just give Mom what she wants," she said. "You have your business. You have your investments. Why fight over everything? Just let her have half and move on." I studied her face. I tried to understand where this was coming from. "Jen," I said carefully, "your mother is claiming I owe hundreds of thousands of dollars that I don't owe. She's claiming I'm hiding assets. She's trying to take everything." Jennifer shrugged. "Mom says you've been hiding money for years. She says you have accounts she doesn't know about. She says you're not as successful as you pretend to be." That was the moment I realized something was very wrong. "You believe her?" I asked. Jennifer looked away from me. "I believe that money makes people do strange things, Dad. I believe that maybe you weren't as honest as you should have been." I didn't argue with her. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded and said okay. Jennifer left my office that day feeling like she'd won something. I watched her walk out the door, and I made a promise to myself. Not a threat. A promise. I would find out the truth about what was happening in my family. I would understand how my wife and my daughter had become strangers to me. And when I understood, I would act. The weeks leading up to the hearing were educational. I hired a private investigator. His name was James. He was a retired detective who now did background work for attorneys. I gave him a list of names and a budget. I told him to find everything. James came back with information that made me sick. Catherine had been having an affair for almost 2 years. The man she was seeing was a financial planner named Gregory. He had helped her set up shell companies. He had helped her create the fake documents. He had helped her plan how to take everything I owned. Derek was involved too. He had been stealing from my company for 3 years. Small amounts at first, then larger amounts. He had created fake invoices. He had padded payroll. He had been funneling money into accounts that Catherine controlled through Gregory. Jennifer knew. Jennifer had known for at least a year. Jennifer had helped cover for them. Jennifer had been lying to me every time she came to my office pretending to care. I sat in my study at night and read through James's reports. I felt nothing. I was hollow. I was sad. I was angry. I was all of these things at once and none of them. Robert called to ask if I was ready for the hearing. I told him I was. I didn't tell him what I had found. I didn't tell him about Gregory or the shell companies or Derek's theft. I wanted to wait. I wanted to see what Catherine would do in court. I wanted to watch her lie to a judge. I wanted to see her face when she realized I had been watching her all along. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. I put on my best suit. I drove to the courthouse alone. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes before going inside. I watched people walk past. I watched couples arguing in the parking lot. I thought about my marriage. I thought about my daughter. Catherine was already there when I entered the courtroom. She was sitting with her attorney. Jennifer was behind them. Derek was next to Jennifer. They looked like a united front. They looked like a family that had already won. I sat on the opposite side of the aisle. I nodded at Robert. I sat quietly and waited. The judge entered. He was an older man with tired eyes. He looked like he had seen every trick and every lie that humans could create. He asked everyone to be seated. Catherine's attorney stood up. He was a slick man with an expensive suit and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He began to speak. "Your Honor, my client is seeking an emergency order for financial disclosure. We have reason to believe that Mr. Anderson has been hiding assets and misrepresenting his financial situation. We have documentation showing that Mr. Anderson is significantly in debt, to the tune of over $84,000, and that he has been concealing this from my client and from this court." I watched Catherine's face as she stood up to present her case. She walked to the front of the courtroom with confidence. She looked at the judge. She looked at her lawyer. She looked at me. She smiled. "Your Honor, I have been married to Mr. Anderson for 28 years. I have supported him through everything. I believed we were building a life together. But over the past several years, I noticed changes. He became secretive. He stopped discussing finances with me. He became defensive whenever I asked about money." She paused. She pulled out a folder. She started showing documents to the judge. "These are bank statements from Mr. Anderson's personal accounts. These show a consistent pattern of debt accumulation. These show that he has been living beyond his means and hiding the truth from me. Your Honor, I am requesting that the court freeze all joint assets and grant me temporary control of our finances to ensure that Mr. Anderson cannot hide or dissipate any more assets." She laid out the fake documents one by one. She pointed to the numbers. She pointed to the signatures. She told a story that was completely made up. I sat quietly. I didn't move. I didn't react. I watched her perform her little show, and I felt nothing. The judge looked at the documents. He frowned. He looked at me. "Mr. Anderson," the judge said, "do you have a response to these allegations?" I stood up slowly. I smoothed my suit. I looked at Catherine. I looked at Jennifer. I looked at Derek. "Your Honor," I said quietly, "may I have 2 minutes to present my response?" The judge nodded. I opened my briefcase. I pulled out a folder too, but mine was much thicker than Catherine's. I walked to the front of the courtroom. I stood next to the judge's bench. I looked at him directly. "Your Honor, the documents my wife has presented are fabricated. Every single one of them. They contain signatures that are not mine. They contain account numbers that do not exist. They contain financial information that has no basis in reality." Catherine's attorney stood up. "Objection. Your Honor, my client has provided notarized documents. Mr. Anderson is simply making accusations without evidence." I held up my hand. "With the court's permission, I will provide that evidence." The judge nodded. I started with the easy things first. I pulled out property deeds. "This is the deed to our primary residence, which is valued at $1.2 million. This is the deed to our beach house, valued at $800,000. This is the deed to the commercial property on Main Street, valued at $2.4 million. This is the deed to the shopping center I purchased 3 years ago, valued at $3.1 million. I watched Catherine's face as I spoke. Her smile was gone. Her confidence was fading. Then I pulled out stock certificates. "These are my investment accounts. These are my brokerage statements. These show a diversified portfolio valued at approximately $800,000 in equities alone." I kept going. "These are the ownership documents for my construction company. These are the annual reports showing consistent profitability. These are the tax returns from the past 5 years, all filed honestly and accurately." I set each document on the judge's desk. I set them down carefully. I made sure every page was visible. Finally, I pulled out the final set of documents. "And these," I said quietly, "are the real bank statements. These show the actual balances in my accounts. These show that I am worth approximately $8.7 million, not in debt as my wife has claimed." The courtroom was silent. The judge was staring at the documents in front of him. He looked up at me. He looked at Catherine. "Mrs. Anderson," the judge said slowly, "I need you to explain these documents." Catherine's face had gone pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I didn't let her recover. "Your Honor," I said, "I have also brought evidence that my wife has been engaged in an affair for the past 2 years. I have evidence that she has been working with a financial planner to commit fraud. I have evidence that my son-in-law has been stealing from my company for the past 3 years. And I have evidence that my daughter has been knowingly assisting in this conspiracy." I pulled out James's reports. I set them on the desk next to everything else. "I am requesting that this investigation be paused immediately. I am requesting that my wife and her co-conspirators be investigated for fraud, theft, and conspiracy. And I am requesting that this court recognize that I am the victim here, not my wife." The silence in that courtroom was different from before. It was heavy. It was meaningful. The judge looked at the mountain of documents in front of him. He looked at me. He looked at Catherine, who was now gripping the edge of the courtroom railing like she might fall over. "Mr. Anderson," the judge said, and his voice was different now. It was respectful. It was careful. "You have presented quite a case here." I nodded. "I am going to order a full investigation into the documents presented by Mrs. Anderson. I am also going to order a forensic audit of all financial records in this marriage. This hearing is continued until further notice." Catherine's attorney was frantically whispering to her. Jennifer was staring at me like she didn't recognize me. Derek had his head down, looking at his phone, trying to seem casual but failing completely. I gathered my documents. I put them back in my briefcase. I walked back to my seat. As I sat down, Catherine turned around. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was fear. The hearing ended 30 minutes later. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight. Robert was next to me, asking questions, making plans, talking about next steps. I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about the past 4 months. I was thinking about all the times I had sat quietly while my family plotted against me. I was thinking about how sure they had been that they would win. I was thinking about how they had underestimated me completely. The next 12 hours were chaotic. The news spread quickly. Jennifer called me 6 times. I didn't answer. Derek tried to text me. I didn't read the messages. Catherine left voicemail after voicemail, first angry, then pleading, then crying. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I went to my office. I sat at my desk. I made phone calls. I called my accountant. I called my other attorney, the criminal one. I called James and asked for any additional information he could find. By midnight, I had a complete picture. Catherine's affair was well documented. Her financial fraud was provable. Derek's theft was traceable. Jennifer's involvement was documented through emails and text messages. I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice. I wanted the truth to be known. I wanted my family to understand that you cannot lie to a judge and get away with it. You cannot steal from people who keep records. You cannot underestimate someone just because they are quiet. The investigation that followed lasted 6 months. Gregory, the financial planner, was arrested first. The fraud he had helped Catherine execute was traced back to multiple clients, not just me. He faced charges in 3 different counties. Derek was fired from my company. The police questioned him for 2 days. He admitted to taking money but claimed Catherine had forced him to do it. He claimed Jennifer knew everything. He claimed they had all been in on it together. Jennifer was questioned next. She cried the entire time. She said she didn't know how deep it went. She said she only found out recently. The evidence showed otherwise. The emails she had sent, the meetings she had attended, the lies she had told all came to light. Catherine was the last to face consequences. The court froze her assets. The judge in our divorce case recused himself due to the criminal nature of what had been alleged. A new judge was assigned. The forensic audit showed that Catherine had hidden over $400,000 in separate accounts. She had been planning this for years. I sit here now, 2 years later, and someone asks me if I regret the way things turned out. I think about that question. I think about my marriage of 28 years. I think about my daughter, who I hardly see anymore. I think about the grandson I have never met. I regret that it had to happen this way. I regret that Catherine chose deception over honesty. I regret that Jennifer chose money over family. But I do not regret standing up for myself. I only wish I had seen the signs earlier, but I do not regret exposing the truth. The lesson here is simple. People will try to take advantage of you. They will lie. They will cheat. They will convince themselves that they deserve what you have worked for. They will underestimate you if you let them. But you don't have to let them. If this story resonated with you, join our channel by liking and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.